Oh my goodness.
This is game 2 of the Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura Speed Chess Championship Final 2023. It was a hotly anticipated match for games like this. Now Carlsen demonstrates a crushing positional idea, but don't assume the result of the game, because this is blitz chess. Anything can happen in a scramble, especially against Hikaru, right? And just before we dive in, don't forget, check out the link below to chessbook.com if you haven't already. It's the #1 place to learn and build your opening repertoire. And it won't just show you the moves, but also the themes of the opening, so you can learn the strategy and ideas. And then you can go away, play online, come back, and it'll instantly tell you where you went wrong in your online games, because it integrates with Lichess and chess.com. Check that one out. Thank me later. It's really awesome. So Magnus goes e4. We get e5, knight f3, knight c6, and the Roy Lopez on the board. Hikaru goes for his favourite Berlin defence, and Magnus goes d3, not going into the endgame where the queens come off the board. Bishop c5 from Hikaru, and now Magnus plays a move which is rare. The main moves are like pawn c3, castles. He goes bishop a4 immediately, it never got provoked. We get castles from both players, rook e8, c3, and now Hikaru's turn to play a slightly strange move. He goes bishop to f8. So he doesn't yet commit with d6. He obviously didn't want to lock the bishop outside the pawn chain. Maybe he had an eye on d4, coming with tempo, and we're going to see how he redeploys this piece. So we get rook e1, pawn h6, knight b to d2, d6, Magnus strikes in the centre, now that this one's adequately covered. We get bishop d7, breaking this annoying pin, keeping an eye on d5, and now h3 from Magnus. He just holds off on d5. Hikaru is a King's Indian expert. He wants to play some kind of pawn structure like this. So Magnus is kind of playing the player here and not just the position. Not that this is a bad move. g6 now played, Hikaru going for one of his favourite setups, and bishop c2. Real grandmasterly retreating move. Supports this pawn, once this knight remanoeuvres, you need this one covered in case black takes here, and later on this one can come to life if the tension in the centre resolves itself. So we see bishop g7, knight f1 going on the journey. We get queen e7 now from Hikaru, and it's the start of a dubious queen remaneuver. Going back a move, you could have gone a5 or something a bit slower, but knight g3 played, and now queen f8. Hikaru sits that one on the starting square of the rook, well, after castles. What's his idea? Maybe f5 in future, but he never quite gets it in, because after bishop e3, rook a to d8, queen d2, Hikaru now does something about the centre here, but again in a dubious manner. What should he do? Well, the computer's actually calling for d5 here. Very interesting move, because although it weakens this one, there's then huge pressure on this one. But Hikaru does this, b3 covers the square, and now we see his point, pawn to c5. But this is a very risky way to play, because Magnus can close the centre here, which he doesn't do, and even after b6, to reroute this knight, where is it actually heading? Even if it gets to d8, these squares are all covered. So that would have been a great way for Magnus to go, but again, maybe he didn't want to give Hikaru this play with knight h7 or something, and f5. So instead, he just holds off a move. We get b6, queen e2, looking at this square. Now takes on d4, pawn recaptures, and Hikaru hops back with the knight. You never went d5, Magnus? Fine, I'll recycle that one. Pressure your centre. We get pawn pushing finally. The knight lands here, and Magnus plays in a very simple way. You can go knight d2, preparing f4, but then g5 gets a bit murky. So Magnus takes that knight. Hikaru recaptures, and now he just holds off with f4. This pawn could become weak. He starts with queen a6. Probing here, Hikaru covers tactically, If queen takes, the bishop can take here, and so Magnus plays one of his classic squeezy moves, pawn to a4. He's grinding like a grandmaster. We get bishop c8, evicting the queen. It drops all the way back to f1. Anything you can do, I can do better. Now knight d7, classic remaneuver to open this bishop. Look at the dark square here, and so pawn f4. Magnus seizes that space. And this is the kind of pawn structure which makes grandmasters fear this kind of Benoni setup. You know, black's under pressure, cramped for room. Now h5, looking to kick that knight on g3, then pressure this pawn. And this is where Magnus plays the positional idea which every chess player should remember. So what does he do? Well, he pushes forward with pawn to e5. Now it looks impossible because after pawn takes, if you recapture, well, black's simply winning a pawn with a great game. But this is the follow-up move. You go f5, and what you've done is cleared a square on e4 for the knight, and you've now locked 2-3 pieces out of the game all in one go by this pawn which is about to be blockaded. And so that's why Hikaru just chucks the pawn straight back. Really instructive positional play from both players. So the knight recaptures. He brings his second rook to the e-file, and it's just giving him enough play. Because if white goes f6 now, for example, looks like you're forking pieces. Well, at the end of the line, the bishop drops. This is the problem with that move. So Magnus has to do something about this bishop. The most accurate way is with bishop g5, but he goes bishop f4, and it allows Hikaru to take here, which looks suicidal to open the king, but there's a specific point to this move. You're forcing the knight to move and opening this e-file tension. So Magnus jumps forward, best move, looking at these pieces, but also potentially jumping here, which will be just horrible for black. And now what should black do? Well, you actually need to trade on e1 immediately. But Hikaru comes up with a really nice idea that would be great, except for the fact it doesn't quite work tactically. So he plays the move of bishop to a6, hitting this queen. And if queen captures that undefended piece, well, this is Hikaru's point. You take with check, you've won an exchange. If rook recaptures, the other one takes back. Black's doing really well. And if you don't take that bishop, what else are you playing? You know, queen f2, you're running into bishop d4. If you try and block the way here, again, it's just not good. But the tactic which Hikaru has overlooked, can you find it? It wins on the spot and forces Hikaru to resign. So the move to play here is rook takes on e7 and Hikaru resigns.
Oh, blunder, rook e7! Oh, Hikaru forgot.
My goodness.
Hikaru forgot that rook takes e8 is going to pin the queen. He drops a minor piece.
Why did he do so? Well, obviously he thought that was impossible because of bishop takes on f1, winning the queen. But the problem is white takes the second rook and pins the black queen to the king. So this is one sample line, and when the smoke clears, you know, say you save the bishop, well, you take here, king recaptures, you're an entire rook up, of course that's clearly gone. And whichever way you try and run the tactics, you know, if you take here, for example, queen takes here, you're always ending up a piece down, this time a minor piece, it's a lost position. So very instructive idea, this clearance move of, e5 and then f5. Remember that one for your games. I hope you enjoyed this one. Do smash subscribe to never miss a future video, and to see another epic game of chess, check out the video on screen. Thanks very much for watching, and see you soon.